And the other thing we're asking, the main one, is renting versus buying. Is it still an option that we should consider? Let's speak to Jonathan Davies, who's an economist and wealth manager. Jonathan, good morning to you.
Hello, Ronnie.
So, where do we stand? Renting or buying?
Well, of course, it's always down to individual circumstances. Of course, 30, 40 years ago, house prices were only 3 times earnings. Now they're 8 times earnings. So that's something that perhaps people with grey hairs need to bear in mind about younger folk finding it difficult. With regards to renting, it's interesting that rents haven't risen for years, several years. No doubt landlords try to raise them. I'm talking about outside of London, I hasten to say.
Yeah.
No doubt landlords try to raise rents, but you know what? They can't achieve them. Rents haven't risen for years, so people should bear that in mind. With regards to buying, if you have a sizable deposit, whether you've saved it yourself or indeed Bank of Mum and Dad has come along, there's no doubt that the cost of servicing a mortgage, as I say, assuming you've got a sizable deposit, is probably lower right now than renting. So you'd think, well, it's a no-brainer. You should buy rather than rent. However, people should not forget what's coming down the pike. Do you know what, Ronnie? Today, we have the lowest interest rates and the lowest mortgage rates in 300 years. Now, I put it to you, with that kind of statistic, I would say there's only one direction that interest rates can eventually go, and that's up.
One of the best advice I ever got was from my stepfather-in-law. When I went into the housing market, he said, your house is a home, it's not an investment. Don't see it that way, and that way everything else will become as an extra. Do you think, and bearing in mind everything that's happened to us over the last 10 years, do you still think that a house is an investment that we should consider in light of other things like stocks and shares or saving?
Well, when you consider the hard numbers, house prices in the south of England, outside of London, haven't actually risen much for several years. They got to a peak to 2007 with all the easy lending, and then they fell 20-25% for a couple of years, and then they rose again. But the prices that they are now, they're not much different to 2007, which actually was not much different to 2005. So we're practically a decade later, and house prices are not much higher, if at all, than nearly a decade ago. So to answer your question, no, they haven't been a sound investment for many years. And no, at these extraordinary high levels, because, you know, we're in a bubble, we've been in a bubble for a long time. I don't know how long it's going to continue, but that bubble at some point will burst. So no, buying a house is not going to secure your retirement. It's going to give you somewhere to live, as you say.
Jackie in Bramford just called us, Jonathan. She's saying if she hadn't been for Mum and Dad helping them buy their first house, they would never have been able to afford to get one. I wonder if we're stoking something up here as well, the bank of Mum and Dad, or even the bank of Gran and Grandpa as well.
Well, I think that's absolutely true, and indeed, I just wrote a report on it that because retirees grew up in a world of relatively low house prices, admittedly high interest rates, but low house prices. That's why people have done so phenomenally well out of housing over the last generation. But where we are now, house prices have been so high for so long, based upon originally easy lending, although that's cut off now, and now because of extraordinarily low interest rates. Well, again, I go back to one of my first points. We're at interest rates which are at a 300-year low. At some point in the future, they're going to rise. And I will tell you, our forecast is that 5 years from now or so, that's when they will have started rising. And when they start rising, within a year, mortgage rates will have doubled. So you're saying all these people who are lending or giving money, should I say, to their kids or their grandkids, I tell you, I think that you can say goodbye to that money. It's gone. It's lost forever.
Jonathan Davis, economist and wealth manager. Thank you, Jonathan. Well, there